Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Kathleen Fullen, and I would like to introduce Chuck Erickson, running for State Assembly in District 77. As we begin, Chuck, I'd like you to give an opening statement about the educational, vocational, and civic experience you have, which qualifies you for this office, and why you are running for the State Assembly.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. And with that, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Chuck Erickson. I'm running for Assembly District 77, which is located here in Madison. And in regard to my qualifications, I went to public schools here in Wisconsin. I went to the UW-Madison for 1 year, and then I went to the University of Minnesota and have a Bachelor of Arts from University of Minnesota. And I also moved back to Madison with the idea of moving away, but decided I liked it here and I liked smaller cities. Also felt that I could have a larger impact on the community. And then over the course of time, did get an MBA from the college right down the street for me, which was Edgewood College. And so I do have an MBA. In terms of civic experience, also, I just want to mention I've worked in IT for upwards of 30 years and have recently retired from that. In regard to civic and community experience, I became interested in local politics, a few decades ago, actually. And I have served on the Dane County Board of Supervisors. I've been one of 37 since 2002. So for 22 years, I've been serving the community in that capacity. Before that, I was also active in my neighborhood association. For 25 years, I lived in the Oakland Heights section of the Vilas neighborhood. That's down near Regent Street and the stadium. Currently, I live near Monona Bay off West Washington Avenue. I've lived here for 8 years. So within this district, I've lived here for over 30 years. But going prior to the Vilas neighborhood, I was active again in the Vilas Neighborhood Association, helped out with a number of things, anywhere from the newsletter to memberships to recruiting new members and working on issues such as traffic, planning and growth, things that impacted the neighborhood directly, and work to facilitate neighbors getting to know each other and building some sort of community with that. Additionally, I was concerned about simple things like my sidewalk and access for people using wheelchairs or people pushing strollers, and had an issue where that was covered with mud and impassable, and ended up working with a local business owner to address that issue so that that sidewalk was passable. Also worked to get a bench installed for the bus stop, which was at the end of my street. I got tired of seeing bus riders sitting on the curb waiting for the bus to come, and worked with Madison Metro to get a bench placed there. That was all before I was on the Dane County Board of Supervisors. So in 2002, I started on the Dane County Board, and the first resolutions I was able to pass, which was when I was actually in the minority, so I had to work with both sides of the aisle, so to speak, was regarding transportation, specifically biking and the Cap City Trail, and making it more accessible for folks who are using bikes to get to their job or to work, or also for running errands. A fee would have been implemented, and I worked with county government to work around that so that there was not a charge if you were biking to work or if you were running errands. The second big issue that I worked on from really back in the 90s, I was also a volunteer with the Sierra Club. I learned a lot about this thing called climate change, and we're now seeing that as we get these unusual storms, and did that back before I was on the county board. But then when I was on the county board, I became interested in sustainability. I also went to Sweden. I paid for that at my own expense, and came back and implemented sustainable practices for all levels of county government. And finally, I've been very concerned about affordable housing, and was able to help the Bayview Foundation, which is located in the Triangle, which is near where I live, and was able to get funding from the county for the housing and residential portion of that in the amount of 1.3 million. And this last year I was able to get 1 million ARPA funds for the community center, which is a net zero project and is one of a kind in the whole country, and is sustainable, green, et cetera. And currently what I'm doing with the county board is I'm chair of the Lion Energy Center Redevelopment Committee, and there's a lot more I could say, but I'll try and wrap it up here. So
Is there any process you believe the Wisconsin legislature should put in place now for redistricting after the next national census?
Similar to my experience on the Dane County Board, many years ago, it's probably, or 5 years ago, I think it was probably a little bit more, we decided that we wanted to have redistricting handled by an independent private group or committee. And that is what I supported, and that is what I voted to do. And when it comes to, and that's what we did. The district that I'm serving under now is my third district. That district is the first district that was determined by a committee of experts and kept the politicians out completely. For example, when the city of Madison did their districts for the city council for aldermanic districts, there were, I believe, on the committee 2 alder people on that. On our committee, there were no politicians included. So I was not involved with the decision. It was not influenced by politics at all. That is a similar approach that I feel that should be used for state government. I feel we should have an independent commission that is completely independent, and we all agree to abide by their decisions. I think it should include a wide range of folks from the community, should have diverse voices, diverse interests, and something that I've done in the county board as well is to reach out communities who are usually not involved or don't feel like they have participation. And I feel again that it should be completely independent, and a completely independent separate body should be making those decisions without political influence and no influence from elected officials such as myself.
What issues, if any, do you think you could work on effectively in a bipartisan manner in the next session?
I think definitely, there's many issues that are very important. The issues are access to abortion and healthcare. Also, education is very important. Other issues that are important to me as well are issues that related to gay marriage and preserving gay marriage, and also gay kids, growing up. I think that those are some of the important issues, but I feel that we could work on education because education is important to everybody. And I feel that we could, work across the aisle in regard to that, particularly to change the funding formula for students, because that's something that is an impact or would have an impact here in the city of Madison, but is also something that affects rural communities as well. I feel like we could find some areas of agreement in that to help out, all kids in all schools everywhere. And that's something where we could start. I know that there's been some success in childcare. I just heard that again this evening at an event where, especially in different parts of the state, childcare is pretty much non-existent. And I think that's something that we all have in common, is taking care of kids so that their parents can work successfully at their positions. I think that that's something we could have in common. Another area that, again, I've always been interested in, and the reason I really ran for county board, was the environment. And I think that there's a lot of ways that we can have agreement in regard to things in the state. So for example, our North Woods that we all cherish, whether it's for hunting or something like, paper mills, companies that are creating paper, but we can work on preserving that so it can be used for multiple uses, as well as other items or other things that we can do in regard to preserving the environment and protecting water resources. And also groundwater was something that I was very interested in and concerned about when I ran for the county board. And that's something that everybody needs and everybody needs to deal with. And additionally, climate change, something I feel we can work on in regard to what we're seeing now with extreme weather and dealing with flooding, whether it's near a water body or just trying to drive home from work and the streets are flooded.
What role, if any, do you think the legislature should have in addressing conditions in Wisconsin's state prisons?
Well, I think that the state should have a very large role. The 2 major concerns I have there are the welfare of staff and the welfare of inmates. And so the role that we should play is to make sure that the staff, first of all, the staff who are working in our prison system are respected, they're fairly paid. We need to make sure that the income is at the proper level that it should be. They should have benefits and they should feel secure in their job and their role. Also, if they could have flexibility, because it is a challenging position. Because I'm on the Dane County Board again, I'm very familiar with the criminal justice system and also we have a jail as well, and providing breaks, and also having adequate staffing. So hiring enough people, but also making the role attractive enough so that staffing isn't an issue. But the number one concern is the staff, but also then the safety of the inmates. And that could also extend to providing or making some upgrades to make the facilities safer for, again, both the staff and the inmates. And I think the state definitely should play a role in that.
What role do you think the state legislature has in ensuring successful outcomes for all students, including those with disabilities?
Well, I think that the state, again, definitely has a role. We need to change the funding formula so that there's more funding per student for students. And also, the next thing that the state can play a role in is providing more revenue. Again, the funding formula for students, but just providing more revenue that can go to local school districts, also school districts like ours here in Madison, and so that teachers and anybody working in the school system can be adequately paid and also, again, have adequate benefits, and again, make the positions attractive enough so that we have staffing, so that flexibility is an option for whether it's teachers or assistants or whoever is working in the school system. I also personally feel that this is an issue very important to me because my mother was a public school teacher here in Madison. So when I was growing up here, I was born here, grew up here, and growing up here as a kid, my mother was a teacher at Gompers Elementary School, and she's also a teacher at Orchard Ridge. So I'm very close to public education and very close to educators and what they go through and what they have to deal with. And personally, to me, I'm tired of bashing teachers, and I feel that teachers need to be respected, and we need to respect anybody who's participating or working and educating our children. As for students with disabilities, I want to make sure that the actual teachers and who are working with them have the adequate qualifications. Again, just goes with the same approach. Make sure that make sure that pay is adequate to the work that's being done to make it attractive position, so that there can be flexibility in that role. Also having adequate staffing levels, because if that can be an issue depending upon the situation, but also make sure that for the child with disabilities, that there's a safe environment for them and also a constructive environment for them where they're actually being well taken care of while having a positive experience.
Are there any steps you believe the legislature should take to further address mental health and substance abuse disorders?
I definitely think that the legislature can, again, it goes back to funding and having adequate funding for programs. Personally, I feel that it's very difficult if you have a family member with a mental health condition or an addiction issue. It's very difficult and very challenging to find services. I've seen this, personally, I've seen this in my work in the Dane County Board and programs that we have had to programs that the county supports and work with. I have heard numerous stories and testimony from people where it is very difficult and very frustrating. And again, it goes back to funding. I feel the state can provide more funding to just have the adequate programs and have them there, but they also need to be accessible and culturally available, culturally competent. So we need to also diversify, what we're providing so that it will be appropriate for every member in our community, regardless of your race, ethnicity, background, et cetera. This also would apply to LGBTQIA+ folks. We need to have specific programs geared toward these different communities and provide the funding, obviously, but then also trying to make those services easily accessible and more easily attainable. And I think it's very challenging for the average person to do that right now. So the legislature can definitely play a role in that and making more services available to the community.
What other priorities do you have for your term in office?
Well, there are many. The first one, obviously, the biggest again is abortion access and access to abortion, and abortion is part of healthcare. So that's connected to healthcare. That is very important. I think that everybody should have access to healthcare. I think we need to accept the Medicaid expansion that we've been offered from the federal government. I think that that's a no-brainer that we should just accept that so that we can expand Badger Care and then on top of that, make Badger Care available to more folks and to more people. Everyone should have access, to health care. That's the big issue. Obviously, education is very important. I touched on that a little bit already, what the state can do, but education is important from a standpoint of early childhood education, grade school through high school. That's all, very important. But also with our UW system. Again, when I was growing up here, as a kid, we had a world-class, world-renowned university. And gradually and more, there have been budget cuts to the university system, specifically, UW Madison, but also the entire university system. The governor just proposed providing some more funding for the university system to restore some of the cuts. That's something that needs to be restored, and that's a very critical issue. The other thing that is, aside from abortion, really top at my list again is things that affect the LGBTQI community, and I'm very concerned about trans kids. We need to prohibit conversion therapy. We need to work toward making sure that gay marriage is protected in case Obergefell were overturned. But we need to repeal the 2006 marriage amendment, said that marriage was between a man and a woman. I want to start the process for repealing that. And then we have some statutes that need to be tweaked and addressed. Also, our what's called the gay rights legislation from 1982. I'm very proud to say that Wisconsin was the first state in the country to establish that. However, that does not protect sexual identity. That's not included, and therefore that needs to be added. Another big issue that's very important to me is the reason I originally ran for county board is the environment. And that spans the gamut. For example, for the stewardship fund, the state needs to continue providing funding for the stewardship fund. Again, in my work with Dane County, we purchased a lot of land for marshland preservation and restoration so that we could address flooding, something that we're facing right now. But also Dane County made use of that to purchase numerous acres of numerous acres of parkland. And Dane County has one of the best parkland systems around. And as we saw during the pandemic, that ended up being a real asset and something that was very valuable to a lot of people. So that's something we could do. There's also, again, the big one I was going to mention too is PFAS. The state is currently sitting on tens of millions of dollars that could go out to folks to deal with PFAS contamination and also remediation. And the city of Madison is doing that, and we need to extend that to other communities. But in the same token, we need to also hold polluters accountable, whether it's PFAS or whether it's any other contaminants or any other pollutants. We need to hold those folks accountable. And finally, we just need to work on making our economy more green and more sustainable so that we're reducing our carbon footprint.
What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
What would I like to say? Well, there's a lot of things I could say, but I've always felt that the government can do positive things. The key point is we need to have the right people who are in government. I genuinely care about my community, as I've described from my background. While I am not independently wealthy, so I've had to work, I've always found time to work in the community, contribute, and to volunteer. And I also feel that one issue that is important is familiarity with an area and knowing the area that you're representing, which I clearly have done, which I clearly have after being here for over 30 years, knowing the district as well. But something or another issue that I go back to is experience. I think if you're looking for somebody to fill a role, an actual role, it's great to have expertise in one area. However, it is good to have experience in actually doing that. And that's what I have done. I've worked in a legislative body for 22 years. I'm familiar with working with people who I agree with and people who I don't agree with. And I'm also very passionate about those issues. And I will work very hard to come to some conclusion with that and to have something tangible to show for that. I'm willing to work across the aisle, and I'm willing to spend the time communicating with constituents and gathering experts and working to have a final conclusion that's successful all around. That's what I would have to say. So, and again, primary is August 13th, and I hope you would vote for me.
I want to thank Chuck Erickson for speaking with us and thank the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone that primary election day is Tuesday, August 13th, and the general election is Tuesday, November 5th. Every election is important. Please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.